Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Promhertz, Chart Market Trade Group, and this is your end of day recap for Tuesday, February 28th. Well, this sums up the end of the month, and we are now through 2 months, even though it doesn't feel like it with February being such a short month, 28 days. But we are done and we are on to March. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer there. So here you go, month performance. You can see basically all red without going into any of the macro stuff, which I may do a little bit later. But SPY finished down 2.5% for the month. Qs also red, just barely. I guess it could have finished green if the markets, or excuse me, if the indices would have held in there at the end of the day. But it looks like there was a pretty decent sell program there at the end of the day, which we often see for month end. There's typically for month end, there's either some buying or selling. This kind of went in the direction of what we've seen so far this February, which was more selling pressure. Small caps, they were leading for most of the session. They gave back most of their gains. Yeah, I mean, they just barely touched green for the day, but they were up like about 0.75% at one point. So again, decent fade there at the end of the day. If we look at how the performance did for the week, again, by the way, value and growth both not underperformed, but both finished in the red as well for the month, and value actually underperformed, down 3.2% for the month. I want to talk a little bit about the sector differences that we're seeing in the market. I think it's pretty interesting. If you go back to what we saw basically for a lot of 2022, it was a big year for value. We have not seen that come back into play at all. So I want to start with the indices just to kind of give you a picture of what this looks like. A lot of chop so far. We are leaning to the downside. It looks like we actually closed back below the 200-day moving average and the 50-day moving average, looking at S&P futures. But depending on what index you look at, some people, if you look at SPY, SPY is still above the 200-day moving average. I don't think it matters all that much, other than just to kind of note that the price action is pretty weak, right? You're kind of splitting hairs depending on whether you think we're above or just below the 200-day moving average. Bottom line is it continues to be weak price action, with the S&P futures down about 0.5%. And if you look at how we're going to open up, before I show kind of the shorter term time frames, we're going to open up the new month below value. I think I went over this in yesterday's video, just talking about that we haven't had a month that's open up below the value area. I think since going back to, I think it was back since October, and that was the low of 2022, where we opened up below the value area period. Remember, we rallied up there. We got rejected, and then we went right back down. That was a very tricky month, October. Right, we had a couple really off to a good start, and then faded hard, took out that lower VPOC, reversed on that, and made a nice move up until about December, and then that was a messy month, and then of course January was strong. We hit this upside VPOC. Again, notice how well the version point of controls, telling us where price might reverse. We don't have that situation right now. Well, we do have a VPOC lower down here, but we'll see how this month starts to shape up. March is also on a little bit of the positive side. March is a little bit of a better seasonal month. February is a typically weak month, especially from the mid-month on, which kind of lived up to the history there, with the price action really getting nasty the last about week and a half of February. So here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. We're right down, I've talked a lot about this market being sideways, choppy, right? Well, if we break the value area for the week, right, then we kind of, look further knowing that the price action is weak. Still for the year, we're going to be sideways. But for the week, we'll begin to downtrend and kind of continuing the pattern of what we saw last week. So the level to watch there is 39.66, 39.66. And for SPY, it looks like SPY did actually close below its value area, 396.32. So again, some of those are the differences between the volume profile. Remember, the value areas are based on all of the price and volume activity in a given period. So on the 1 hour chart, we're looking at all the price and volume activity from last week, right? And this is the about one standard deviation of that volume and price activity. And again, we note that that provides some really good support and resistance levels. So currently we're below that. One other thing that jumped out to me on the 5-minute bar for the day is that we did take out this lower VPOC that was sitting down here, kind of lurking below. We came right down to that on the close, right? So again, why did price come down there? Because there's a lot of buyers and sellers that previously met up at this level that we haven't gotten back to, right? And you could see we're kind of holding that virgin point of control level for now, right? That's 39.67. All right, so that's what I see for the indices. I mentioned IWM. Again, that had a pretty nasty fade, up until about 1:30 today. It was hanging around the highs of the day, but heavy selling, and you could kind of see this too, the volume pick up, but there's the pressure to the downside. Qs I don't think acted much different. Kind of see where those finished. We can review these daily charts again. We'll have the once we get into March 1st, we'll see this value area will be let up, but again, this is below value, right, for the Qs and for IWM. Also looks like, I mean, look at how close this is. It looks like it will most likely open up below the value area. So, sometimes price action seems like it has a personality to it, or it has a kind of a mind of its own. But for whatever reason, price action wanted to basically open up the new month below value. Another chart that I thought that was kind of interesting, if we go back to my spreadsheet here with the performances, if you look at the areas that underperformed for the month, you could see that sorry, for the day, really the defensive areas of the market, kind of interesting how weak the energy sectors were today. They were weak all day today. XOP was down 1.5%. XLE was down the same. Utilities were down 1.7%. And things like healthcare. So, again, very different than what we saw last year. A lot of these areas when the market was down, those are the areas that were actually outperforming. And now you don't see that right now. You see things like biotech, just for today, biotech wasn't a big outperformer this month, but, the home builders were up again, even with this rising rate interest environment. The semiconductors, which I wanted to look at these two charts. I've been looking more recently at this XSD chart, right? This is the equally weighted semiconductor ETF. I just think some of the bigger names are not acting as well. So I've been looking a little bit more at the for example, like if you want to see what names are the biggest weights, so first of all, it's equally weighted, right? But NVIDIA, Cirrus Logic, ALGM, MPWR, SLAB, right? This is going to look much different than when you look at the semiconductor ETF. Or the SMH ETF, right? Taiwan Semiconductor is 10%. NVIDIA, both of those ETFs, it is the number one weight, but this one it's 11%. The other ETF it's only 3%. Broadcom is also 5%. AMD, ASML, QCOM. So again, these are your bigger cap names. Probably if you're not used to trading some of the names that I mentioned, you're probably mentioned, when you think semiconductors, maybe you think, the Micron, the AMD, the Broadcom, Taiwan Semi, right? But what's been doing better and showing some really nice strength is names like ALGM, right? Allegro Microsystems, ALCS, I'm not sure if ALCS is in here, but that's another one that's been super strong. Cirrus Logic, of course, has been super strong. Lattice Semiconductor was actually looking really nice today. A couple of these, if we go through some of these charts, and I think this is still setting up. It just, again, didn't close above the candle from yesterday, but look at the volume. So good volume today. Cirrus Logic, right? You could see also finding support at the 20-day moving average. So, there are some really nice areas that there's some really nice stocks that are doing pretty well. Look at STLD, by the way. Had a real nice day today. Not much of a give back at the end of the day, but there are some really strong areas of this market. It's just the overall market's going to have to cooperate, right? And we are going to have to see buyers come in rather than the continued selling from what we saw for the last month and a half. I just wanted to bring up what the month performance was for sectors. All right, so here's performance for the month, and even though I don't have XSD in this spreadsheet, you can see the semis and tech were the best performers. They actually both finished positively for the month. Underperformers, Chinese internet names down 13.8%. Pot stocks, which again, I'm not sure why I even have them still in my spreadsheet, but it is what it is. Gold miners were down 14% for the month. Solar, even though which has been acting a little bit better the last couple of days, was down 8%. The biotechs, I mentioned that today's outperformance was just today. That group was down roughly 7%. REITs were down, utilities down 6%. So again, if you would have told me that the S&P, if you would have given me the performance and told me, hey, what do you think is going to outperform with the S&P down for the month, I probably wouldn't have said semiconductors. So just really interesting, and of course Nvidia did help that, but a number of other names saw good earnings too. So Nvidia certainly helped, but that was not the only semiconductor that acted well this month. Even software was only down 1%. Banks actually did okay. The industrials, which I continue to see strength in the industrials. I run a screen at the end of the day, which shows us what names are trading above value on multiple time frames. And if you look at, this has been just the story over the last month, it's been more industrial names. And again, it's some of them are a little bit more obscure, like an MDU is something I tweeted out the other night. Ingersoll Rand, Dover, Adco, Rockwell Automation, which is another name tied to autos, I believe. So that name doing very well. And then you've got things like Exacta Coating, which is a material name, GPK in there as well. But this is yesterday's list. I'll rerun tonight's. So that's basically it. That kind of sums up for today. The price action, and we'll see how we get going for the new month. But my performance, I'll tweet that out. I ended up down 2% for the month, so not the best performance for me. Probably over traded a little bit this month. Should have reduced positions a little bit more aggressively when this market started to turn. We got a really good signal, which is using the McClellan Summation Index, right, which told us to kind of lighten up on positions. I need to make sure that I kind of adhere to that and maybe take off, 95% of my positions or something like that when we do get that sell signal, because it really makes the environment harder to swing trade, which is mostly what I do. But look to improve. It's always sometimes what happens when you and really kind of pick up on things that you need to improve on and go from there. I remember last year, 2022, I had one of the worst months I've had in a long time. Just had a number of errors or things that didn't go right for me. That was January of 2022. I was down. I started the month down, or started the year down 19%. And I ended up finishing the year 2022 as plus 5%. So I really came back strong after that. But I really had to get my head on straight. So this month, not that bad, and a relative performance. But again, there's always things to improve. Even though we go through a lot at Tribeca Trade Group in terms of trading rules and having planning out your trade and so forth. There are definite times to reduce your risk and signals that we do pick up on. You just kind of have to follow those signals, right? So that's it for today's video. Have a great night all.